on the docket, we've got a few films that we're going to talk about together. The first one being the Super Mario Brothers movie. Again, a film I am surprised we did not give a full review to. This is the latest animated film from Illumination. Of course, this is based on the popular Nintendo video game series, which is already in and of itself a reason to talk about this movie because Nintendo has been so, I guess, notorious for not allowing any of their properties to be made into feature films. I mean, if you look at the history
Thanks
of video
a
game,
lot, 93 Super Mario Brothers.
When's the last time you saw that movie?
It's been, 15 years or something.
Yeah, I barely remember it, but I'm genuinely
Some
curious.
people are starting to stick up for it, and I gotta say, I mean, I don't know. Maybe if I rewatch it, I'll like it. Chill out.
There's a common trend nowadays, right, where people go back and try to retroactively defend movies that weren't well defended at the time, and in a lot of cases, it's deserved. But in some other cases, I don't know if that's how it is with this movie here, the 1990s version of Super Mario Brothers. But it almost feels like this attempt to try to do that with anything that just got bad reviews at the time, as if there are these
people. It's people who grew up with it in their childhood who now have this critical perspective, trying to merge their childhood love for something with their new critical thinking when it comes to film, and trying to put kind of that square peg in that round hole. And I'm not sure they've entirely convinced me on Super Mario Brothers yet.
Nostalgia blinders, man. Nostalgia blinders.
A little bit.
Yeah, but in some cases it works. In some cases, maybe not so much. But anyway, the Super Mario Brothers movie, the latest film from animation studios Illumination. I mentioned that there are some financials that are worth noting with this movie. And it's, again, another reason why we probably should have talked about it. Jay, you very jokingly said the highest grossing movie of the year so far. That's an understatement. That's an understatement.
Yeah.
The film is at, it's like $1.2 billion worldwide. It's a film that is now in the $1 billion club. It's apparently the biggest worldwide opening weekend for an animated film ever. It's also the highest grossing film based on a video game. That's not saying much, but I think the most impressive stat here is that apparently right now it is the fourth highest grossing animated film of all time, which is pretty insane.
What is it behind? Do you have the list? I don't know what the tops are. It's Minions, I believe, right?
Well, I got to see if I can find the list again. I think this is I don't think this is adjusted for inflation, so I think we need to keep that in mind. Yeah, but I believe it's behind the first two Frozens, and Frozens. I think also behind the 2019 version of The Lion King, which we're technically considering an animated film. So I'd have to double check that, but I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense.
For some reason, I thought it was Minions.
I think that's high up there. I'd have, as we're talking, we'll because I'm sure we have some listeners out there who are chomping at the bit to correct us on these things. Yeah. So I'll do some research here as we get into our thoughts on the movie. I do want to make a quick note that it was directed by Aaron Horvath and Michael Jelenic, I believe their names are. This is the same team behind Teen Titans Go, and I remember that movie getting some fairly decent buzz when it came out. So it made me kind of excited for this movie, and knowing that the financials have been really, I guess, alluding to something that at least kids are certainly enjoying. I wanted to see how well it held up for at least our critical minds here. Jay, what did you think of the Super Mario Brothers movie?
So, first of all, highest grossing animated films of all time. Frozen 2, number 1. Frozen, number 2. That's insane.
Wow. Yeah.
Super Mario Brothers is currently number 3.
Oh, it's number 3. Okay.
Super Mario Bros. 3. Number 4 is Incredibles 2.
Okay.
Good movie. But
like that movie a lot.
Lion King new version actually is not on this list. So maybe it is actually, it's not on this list. So maybe it is actually number 3. But yeah, I'm seeing Lion King 1994, which is in 11th place. I bet with inflation,
that's probably way higher. Yeah.
Yeah, way higher. But anyway, the Super Mario Brothers movie. This is I almost didn't even put a star rating for this movie on Letterboxd because I don't feel like it is a movie targeted at anyone who has cognitively matured beyond a middle school level. it is an Illumination film, and we kind of know Illumination's MO at this point, more or less, right? They do the Minions films, they do the Despicable Me's, they do the Secret Life of Pets.
Yeah,
they do films targeted directly at 7-year-olds, right? And there is a place for that. I'm not going to sit here and say that we need to completely disregard those films, especially as a new dad.
That's the thing. They're really good at not just making films like that, but they're really good at marketing them to that demographic as well.
And as you get to watching more of these shows, you just realize most of the stuff is just garbage, like just unbearable. And this is not unbearable. This is not unbearable at all. And it's interesting because as I was kind of reflecting on it, right after I finished it, I was just thinking, yeah, that movie offers nothing to any adult. But then as I was thinking back to it, I was just thinking, wait, there's a reference that only the adults will understand every 3 minutes in that movie. So it is this weird kind of balance. Yeah. Overall, I thought it was okay-ish. Right? I mean, that's kind of where I landed.
I think this is why this is going to be a short episode, because I feel like a lot of these films are going to have very okay-ish reactions to.
I wish it was a lot better. I wasn't mad at it, again, because I had to put it in context of kind of what it is and what it's striving to do.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating when you see this film that is so broad with these stakes that you've seen a million times before. And then you'll have this reference to like, oh, I've played Mario Kart. There's the blue shell. That's the blue shell from Mario Kart.
There's the Rainbow Bridge. Yep, all that.
Rainbow Bridge. And there are fun parts. I think the voice performances, as maligned as, Chris Pratt was when he was cast, I think the voice performances are good. Let me be clear. You cannot do an entire movie where Mario talks like Mario from the video game. It would be awful.
And they at least addressed it in the movie in a very passing joke that the accents were kind of there on purpose for a certain ad placement. Which
they're exaggerated.
I will at least say that was pretty clever. I'll give the film some credit there.
They also have the cameo at the very beginning from the actual Mario actor.
Yes.
At the arcade game.
Yeah.
But I think Jack Black especially is very good in his role, and he's got the song that's gone a little viral. It's, I don't know. What do you say about the Super Mario Brothers at the age of 32? I still like the Mario games. They're fun, and I understand.
That's what I was going to ask you. If you had a history with the games at all. Yeah,
sophisticated games of all time, but they're fun. But I'm willing. There's a conversation to be had about the artistic merit of video games and the artistic expectations you have for video games versus the expectations of films. And I would say generally my artistic interest in video games is lower, as much as that might set some people off. But I'm certainly okay with a video game just being a platformer and being fun and not going into the lore of the world or whatever. But with a film, I expect a little more, and I understand that this film, if my son was 6 or 7 years old, he would eat this thing alive. He would just devour it, and he would buy all the toys, and I'd be, neck deep in Mario memorabilia in his playroom. But as far as my enjoyment watching the film, it was there. It kind of passed over me. Never going to think about it again. Never going to watch it again unless my kid wants to watch it. But I wasn't mad at it. It's, it's just sort of there.
I was a little bit more mad at it. But again, I think I'm coming at it with maybe a different sense of history. But it's like, to your point, is that really a fair viewpoint for a film like this that's really functioning more as an Illumination film than it is a film based on a Nintendo property? And when I kind of look at it that way, I guess I'm more willing to forgive its banalities, but at the same time, as someone that I'm not much of an avid gamer myself, but I'm a big fan of the Nintendo properties, not just with Mario, but The Legend of Zelda, Star Fox, just to name a few. That's really what I grew up playing. All my friends were off playing PlayStation 2 or whatnot. I was in the basement playing my Nintendo GameCube. That was my thing. So I kind of have this like nostalgic connection to these properties, which is why deep down I was hoping for something that felt more like a Mario movie than it did an Illumination movie. And that's why I'm a little bit disappointed in the final product, because despite the fact that the film is not technically terrible, it barely ever feels like a Mario movie. It feels more like the Mario aesthetic was used to just make an Illumination film. And if that's what you're going for, then yeah, I guess that's fine for what it is. It's not really any better or worse than most other movies that Illumination has produced these days. I think it's in the same vein as movies like The Secret Life of Pets or even its sequel. It's just unfortunate, given my love and respect for the Super Mario Brothers as a platform, and to see it only partially represented here is a little bit disappointing, which is why this is not fair to the movie, but maybe this is what's fueling my anger a little bit. The film has been such a huge hit that I have heard rumbling of Illumination working with Nintendo on future properties going forward. And that scares me, given some of the properties that Nintendo has owned and produced over the years. I mean, I could easily see Illumination working with properties like, let's say, Star Fox, for instance, and basically making an animated Guardians of the Galaxy movie, essentially. But I do not want them touching The Legend of Zelda or Metroid Prime, or just Metroid in general, because those are all driven by story and ideas and deep thinking, and real visceral qualities that are not really part of the Super Mario Brothers ethos, right? And that's, I guess, the thing that scares me and why I felt a little bit disheartened by the film, because I'm just kind of looking ahead and hoping for things that don't happen. And again, that's not fair to the Super Mario Brothers movie. But it does make me feel a little bit uneasy about the film that we did get for those reasons. But yeah, the film, I barely remember it since seeing it. I'm kind of in that same boat as you. I think the voice casting is okay. Chris Pratt's actually not bad in the role. I kind of like... I don't think he's that bad. I think if there's any weak link in the voice acting category, it's probably Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong, who sounds like he's not even trying. It just sounds like Seth Rogen being Seth Rogen. Yeah. I mean, Jack Black is really throwing his voice quite a bit, and I don't know if that's in post production like they did with Keegan Michael Key as Toad. I'm not really sure. There's probably a mixture of both happening there, but you can kind of tell he's really trying to stand out. So there are moments from a performative standpoint where I can tell the film is at least trying to have some ounce of sincerity for its property. But I weirdly like the film more when it just leaned into its into its nostalgia, into the member berries, if you will. And I think it honestly needed a little bit more of that.
Yeah, because the alternative, the other half of the film is, like you said, an Illumination movie, and I don't think Illumination is exactly the official animation studio of InSession Film, to say the least. But they have their thing. They make a crap load of money, and more power to them. Kids love their movies, and there is a place for that in the film world. The kind of the critical reception to this was annoying, I think, or at least the dialogue around the movie when it came out was it's just what are people expecting? Some of the animation in this is actually pretty impressive, and
I agree.
They have some cool kind of, call them tracking shots. It's animation, so it doesn't really apply. And when they
the movements are pretty
the side-scrolling platformer elements of Mario, I thought that was pretty clever.
I will say, sorry to cut you off there, because there's one moment in particular that takes place in the beginning of the movie that's just Mario and Luigi going through Brooklyn in what mirrors a Super Mario Brothers level. And it's actually quite brilliant. Like that scene alone, I could have had a whole movie of just them doing that. It's really well done.
Yeah, I liked that a lot too. That's early on. I was kind of thinking, it's got a little juice to it.
The first 15 minutes are actually really good. And I think when this is again something I wanted to talk about, because this movie makes a relatively fair narrative choice that's very different from the game. Because normally the game is about Mario trying to save Princess Peach, In this case, he's trying to save his brother. So the movie essentially swaps the prisoner roles, you could say. Luigi is the one who is taken prisoner, and this time Princess Peach and Mario are together trying to save him, which is not really a bad narrative device. I think the issue is that the time we spend with Mario and Luigi in the beginning is actually quite tender and sweet, that to see them separated almost immediately is kind of unfortunate from a narrative standpoint. And I did miss their camaraderie. I think Charlie Day and Chris Pratt together are really well cast in their respective roles, especially when their voice talents are on screen together.
Yeah, and as far as Peach is concerned, it's got a little bit of that she's not a damsel in distress anymore kind of thing going on, which at times can feel slightly forced. Got a little bit of that girl boss thing going. But Anya Taylor-Joy is mostly good, but you are right. The movie is at its best when it's just Mario and Luigi kind of hanging out, and it makes sense that it would be him searching for Luigi instead of Peach because he hasn't met Peach yet. So it's kind of the origin of Super Mario Brothers. I have very little doubt they will be making a sequel to this movie. So we will see where they go narratively with that one. But I guess I'll watch it. I don't know. My son will be I 4 definitely or 5 by then, so I'll watch it. But I don't know. Illumination is a weird thing. It's a weird thing. Very rarely have animated films truly disregarded adult audiences, which I feel like Illumination mostly does, especially with Minions. I mean, Minions, and I actually like the Despicable Me movies. The Minions movies make me want to bang my head against a brick wall until I go unconscious. But there is a real sweetness to the Despicable Me films, and then they just make these out and out, baby movies with Minions, and that's fine. It's fine. I mean, we get movies targeted at adults, so why can't kids have movies directly targeted at them, I guess?
Yeah. I think the only thing we ask for as adults is some ounce of sincerity that we're able to at least sense in the product. And there are cases where there are movies that are strictly for children that either have it or they don't. You mentioned Despicable Me from Illumination. That does have a lot of sincerity to it. There is a sense of care for its characters. The filmmakers feel like they actually like those characters and want to dive into who they are without going deep from an adult mentality. But then there are others that just feel childishly cynical, if that's a way to put it. Like they're really just there for a product to take advantage of kids' lines in the theater. And I feel like the Super Mario Brothers movie is kind of straddling that line between the two. There are elements that I feel like, okay, there's some qualities here that I can sense a level of care and authenticity. And then there are other qualities where I just don't. And it kind of splits the difference in the final product, which is why it sounds like we're just so mixed on it overall.
Yeah, very, very mixed. It's interesting. I am very mixed, and I do have a lot of thoughts on it, but also when I'm not thinking about the movie, it's never going to enter my mind. Unless I'm prompted, I'm just not going to think about it, which is it's interesting. I mean, they could have made something a lot more interesting than they did. That's the only reason to be kind of mad at it, because I think there is potential there. And I think they really did. They were creative with some of the visuals in the film. And I think there is a sense of scale to some of the movie that I really appreciated, but narratively, thematically, there's just nothing there.
Yeah, maybe they'll try a little harder when it comes to the Super Mario Brothers 2 or whatever the heck they decide to call it. As it stands,
you are right. They cannot do Zelda. They
cannot do Zelda. I that's one. If I am not a cynical person, Jay, you know this, right? When it comes to movies, I like to give all movies a fair shake, but I will be very close to refusing to even watch a Zelda movie if Illumination makes it. I will be that. I might still see it, but I will be that close to just flat out refusing, because I do not think that property is for Illumination. The sensibilities.
I don't know how you
can
do
different.
it, and I don't know that the appeal is there for kids. Some of those games have such a sense of melancholy to them.
They do, and if you want to be faithful to the games, and Illumination, as much as I didn't say this felt much like a Mario movie at times, it is still mostly a faithful adaptation, at least visually and aesthetically. But if you want to be faithful to the Zelda games, it's almost unfilmable, right? I mean, like just the overall concept, the fact that you kind of have to make a silent movie when you think about it.
You could have said that about Mario too. Not exactly the most vocal character.
Actually, this could have been a silent movie when you think about it. So, I think about this further. I want to bring this one point up before we transition to the next film on our docket. I'm thinking of the run of video game adaptations that we have had over the years, and I feel like, whether we like this film or not, I feel like there is this slight uptick or resurgence in video game adaptations, not just with film, but also with television, because we obviously just saw the first season of The Last of Us on, well, now Max, which was very well received and overall very well done. I thought it was actually a pretty good show. But I think back to even movies like, did you see Tomb Raider, the movie with Alicia Vikander in it?
I sure did. That's another one I haven't thought about since they came out. But yes,
well, I didn't hate that one, though. I mean, it's not great, but it's certainly better than I think most others in its competition. But
they were supposed to do a sequel, and it was supposed to be directed by Ben Wheatley.
I would have been interested in that. I actually would have been pretty curious about that.
I thought Vikander was good, and Goggins was good.
I agree. So instead, Ben Wheatley is now doing the sequel to The Meg, which is just the fact that he's tied to that makes me curious to see that one.
Hot off the heels of Rebecca, he's making The Meg.
The Meg. He also directed a horror movie in between that, In the Earth, which was a very wonky movie.
I have not seen that movie.
It's interesting. I don't think it all works, but I think as a movie, it's at least pretty interesting. Super Mario Brothers movie. It's available to rent on Prime and all of your other streaming platforms now. It's not one that Jay and I fully responded to, but if you have a 7-year-old, you might want to just go ahead and watch it with them. That's the moral.
You'll be spending a lot of money on toys.